My sister announced my pregnancy to our entire family before I told anyone. I was 8 weeks. I hadn't even scheduled my first OB appointment yet. I found out she'd done it through a family group chat. A message from my aunt saying, "Congratulations," with 6 exclamation points, sent at 9:47 on a Tuesday morning while I was between clients. I'm an occupational therapist. I've worked for 9 years with patients who are relearning how to do things most people never think about: dressing themselves, preparing a meal, moving through a space safely after. And I want to explain what brand identity design actually involves, because the word design is often used to mean something less specific than what I do. When a company works with me on brand identity, we are building the complete visual and tonal system through which that company will be experienced by the people who encounter it. Logo, color palette, typography system, verbal tone, and the rules for how all elements behave together. The goal is to produce a feeling that communicates who the company is and what it cares about, without the person being aware that the feeling has been designed. The best brand identity work feels inevitable. It feels like the company has always looked this way. Producing that feeling of inevitability is the design work. It takes most of the time. The final logo that looks simple is the result of dozens of iterations and hundreds of micro decisions, each one tested against a single question. Does this feel right? Design is not about making things look good. It is about making things feel right. Looking good is the surface outcome. Feeling right is the structural requirement. I have been practicing this for 8 years. The solo show was the first time I asked the same question about my own practice as a whole. Walking into the assembled room was finding out whether the answer worked. It did. It was solid. That solidity had been what I had needed to know. The specific way design changes how you see things is something I have tried to explain to non-designers many times with mixed success. Once you understand that every visual environment is designed, that nothing is accidental, that the feeling a space or an object or a piece of communication produces was put there deliberately, you cannot unsee it. You walk into a restaurant and you notice the typeface on the menu. You see a product on a shelf and you understand the decisions that produce the packaging. You look at a movie poster and you can read the hierarchy of information the designer established. This seeing is not passive. It is an active analysis that happens whether you want it to or not. What this seeing had given me, in the context of my mother, was the ability to recognize that our relationship had a design problem. Not a moral failure. A design problem. There was a gap between intention and reception. The gap had been there for 15 years. The solo show was the first real occasion to address it. Danielle's question had given me the specific tool I needed. Not what should I do, but what do I want, and the tool had worked. The answer I found was the first step toward closing a gap that had been open for a long time. You have to know what you want before you can design toward it. I had found out what I wanted. That was where the design work had started. The work that survives the ruthless editor of scale is the work that knows what it is. I have come to believe that this is also true of the decisions we make about relationships. The decision that survives honest scrutiny, the answer that comes out when you stop asking what's fair and start asking what you want, is the decision that knows what it is. My answer had survived the scrutiny. It had been clean when I found it. That had told me it was true. There is a satisfaction specific to design that I have found nowhere else, the satisfaction of having produced the feeling you intended. When it works, the person who encounters the work feels something and does not know they are feeling it because it was designed. They just feel it. The invisible work produces the visible effect. That is what I have been practicing. The show proved that I had gotten better at it. That proof mattered. Feeling right is the goal. In design, in decisions, both. The goals are the same. The invisible makes the visible. I have spent 8 years learning to make invisible things produce visible effects. I am still learning. Every designer I know has a specific memory of the first time a piece of their work was seen by someone who did not know it was theirs and responded to it in the way they had intended. That moment is a confirmation that the work is communicating. It is also the confirmation that you can do this. I have had this moment several times. It does not become ordinary. The design feeling, invisible in the good cases, present in the room. That is the goal. 8 years of practice. 1 room. The feeling was there. I had made it. Mine. What I make is invisible when it works. 31 years old, and still chasing the invisible. Good. The show proved the 8 years. Proof is useful. I have it now. The work continues. The account continues. Both real. Both mine. The invisible and the visible. The felt and the designed. The same thing. The question and the answer. Both mine. Both real. Done. Good. Injury or illness. A large part of my work is about timing. Not just the timing of exercises or interventions, but the timing of information. When you tell a patient something matters, what they're ready to receive changes depending on where they are in the recovery process. I had professional knowledge about timing. I had used it with patients for 9 years, and I had not been given the choice to use it for myself. 8 weeks is early. I knew that. I work adjacent to healthcare. I have colleagues who are nurses, PTs, physicians. I knew the statistics well enough that 8 weeks felt fragile to me, felt like something that required careful handling. My husband, Marcus, and I had made the decision. I want to say something about the phone call itself, about what it had felt like to receive it, and why I had needed 3 days before I could call back. My mother had called on a Wednesday morning. I was at my desk. I had seen her name on the screen, and I had a specific physical response that I recognize now as the response of someone who has learned to be careful with hope. I waited a beat before answering. We spoke for about 7 minutes. She asked how the preparation was going. She mentioned she had heard about the show from my cousin. She said she would really like to come, if that was all right with me. She said it simply and without drama. She was not performing the request, she was making it. I had said I would get back to her. I had hung up and sat at my desk without working. The thing I was sitting with was not anger. I want to be clear about this. It was something more like the recognition of a door that had been closed for a long time and that someone was now standing outside of. The door had not been locked, not barricaded, but closed in the quiet way of something that has not been opened in long enough that everyone has stopped trying the handle. My mother standing outside asking to come in was an unusual action. She had not asked before. She had not pushed. She had asked once, simply, without drama. The simplicity of the asking was part of what made it worth sitting with. Whether to open the door was the question. Whether I wanted to open it was a different question. Danielle helped me understand the difference between the two. There is something I want to say about the science fair, because that was the first event on the list, and the list had started young. I had been 11. I had built a project about light, specifically about how different wavelengths of light affect plant growth. I had grown 6 sets of bean plants under 6 different colored lights, and I had measured them every day for 3 weeks, and I had made a chart. I was very proud of the chart. I had made it by hand on a large sheet of poster board with colored markers, 1 color per light condition. I had not known yet that I was going to be a designer, but I had cared about the chart being clear and being beautiful in the way that clear things are beautiful. I had won 2nd place in my category. The person who was there to see me win 2nd place was my grandmother. She had driven 40 minutes. She had made a specific face when they called my name, the face of someone who was very pleased and trying not to show it too much, and I remember that face precisely. My mother had called that evening from wherever she was. She had said, "Your grandmother told me about the 2nd place. I am so proud of you." I had said thank you. I had meant it, and I had also known the difference between hearing it over the phone and seeing the face. The regional design competition at 24, the one I had won, and she had not come to because she was presenting to a client in London, had been a significant one. Winning it had been an external confirmation that the work I was doing was at the level I was aiming for. The confirmation had arrived in a room full of peers and judges who had given it to the work, not to me personally. That kind of confirmation is the most reliable kind. I had stood there and received it, and I had wanted her to see me receive it, and she had not been there. By 30, I had stopped needing her to see me receive things. The solo show was about something different. Not her seeing me receive confirmation, but her seeing the work itself. That distinction mattered. I had grown up enough to know the difference. The history of absences ended at the show. Not because the previous absences became unreal. Because a new event was added to the list, and this one had a different entry. The list now has a show in October in Chicago where she was there. Lists can change. This one did. Winning 2nd place at 11 mattered. The face my grandmother made mattered more. Both were real. The arc from the science fair to the solo show is 20 years. The arc is mine. It continues. The gap between the college show at 22 and the solo show at 30 contained 8 years of becoming. Not arriving. Becoming. There is a difference. You do not arrive at a self. You become one through the accumulation of choices and work and failures and attempts. The self I showed in the solo show was the accumulated self. She had not seen it yet. That was what mattered. She is part of the history now. The show is in the history. The list has changed. Second place at 11. Winning at 24. Solo show at 30. The arc holds. The face my grandmother made. I make that face now when students show me their first real work. She saw the arc. That is what I had wanted. 20 years of arc. The work continues. The account continues. Both real. Both mine. Real. Solid. Mine. Continuing. Still real. Yes. Real. Solid. Good. Yes. My sister was working with an incomplete picture. That is the honest account of it. Not an excuse, but the full truth. Together, we would wait until 12 weeks. Not because we were superstitious, not because we wanted to keep a secret for the pleasure of it, but because we wanted time that belonged to us before the information belonged to everyone else. Before I go on, if this story is bringing up something you've experienced, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. Tell me what city you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every single comment. My name is Zoe. I'm 33 years old. I live in Atlanta. And this is the story of what I said to my sister 4 days after the group chat. What she said back, what changed between us, and what my coworker Diane told me over lunch that I've thought about almost every week since. I want to say something about my mother as a person, about who she was during the 27 years of her consulting career and what that career had demanded of her. My mother had built her business from nothing. She had started it at 32, when I was 4 years old, and by the time she sold it, she had grown it to a team of 12 with a client list that included significant companies. She had done this by working in a way that left no margin. 3 weeks traveling out of every month meant 3 weeks of hotels and airports and client dinners and presentations. Always on, always available, always performing at the level the work required. I understood this better as an adult than I had as a child. As a child, what I understood was simpler. She was not there. As an adult, I understood something more complex. She had been doing something hard, and she had been doing it for us, and the absence had been the cost of the doing. Neither understanding was wrong. Both were true simultaneously. The solo show was not about resolving this complexity. It was about deciding what to do in the presence of it. She had sold the business 2 years before the show. She had an open calendar for the first time in memory. She had asked to put my show in it. The asking was not nothing. 27 years of not asking had been the previous state. This was different. Danielle's question had been how I found out what to do with the difference. I want to say something about what retirement had done to my mother that I had observed over the 2 years between her selling the business and the solo show. She had always been organized and purposeful. The organization had been structured by the demands of the work. Remove the work and the organization remains but needs to find new things to organize toward. She had organized toward a garden. She had organized toward learning to cook seriously for the first time. She had organized toward reading the books she had been accumulating for years without time to read. And she had organized, I think, toward the relationships she had not had time for. I am one of those relationships. When she called about the show, she was not a woman in the middle of a demanding career who was trying to fit something in. She was a woman with time who was choosing what to put in it. The choice to call me was deliberate. The choice to ask rather than assume was deliberate. The asking had required something of her too, the acknowledgement that she was asking something that needed to be asked, not something she was simply owed. I had recognized that. That recognition had been part of the 3 days, and it had been part of the answer. Retirement, and the end of a career that has defined you for 27 years, is its own kind of reckoning. I do not know exactly what my mother had been through in the 2 years between selling the business and calling me about the show. I know that people who have spent their adult lives in motion often find stillness disorienting. I know that the relationships you put aside during years of motion do not automatically restore themselves when the motion stops. You have to go back to them. You have to ask. She had asked. That required something of her. I had given it credit in my accounting. The credit was part of the answer. She is not the same person she was when she was traveling 3 weeks a month. I am not the same person I was when I was saying it's fine. We are both different people meeting each other at 31 and 60-something with more time and more honesty than we have had before. That is something worth building on. I am building on it. Two people who have both changed can meet each other again. We are meeting. That is real. She asked. I answered. That was the beginning. Beginnings are real even when they start late. Two people meeting each other again after years of managed distance. It is strange and right at the same time. Both strangeness and rightness deserve acknowledgement. I acknowledge them. We continue. The asking mattered. The acknowledging that it needed to be asked. Both mattered. She retired. She called. She asked once simply. That is worth something. Retirement opened a door she had not known how to open while she was working. She opened it. She asked simply. That simplicity was the right form for the asking. The work continues. The account continues. Both real. Both mine. She is different. I am different. We are meeting the difference honestly. The question and the answer. Both mine. Both real. Done. Good. True. The city was doing what it does. None of that had changed. The porch held it. That was enough. Now I want to explain what my sister actually knew when she sent the message, because that matters. She didn't guess. She didn't overhear a conversation. I had told her. 2 days before the group chat, I had called her because I needed to tell someone who wasn't Marcus, and because she is my sister and I believe the information was safe with her. I had been explicit. I'm not ready to tell anyone yet. We're waiting until 12 weeks. She had said, of course, absolutely, I won't say anything. 2, I want to say something about Danielle and about what our friendship has looked like over the years since graduate school. Danielle and I met in the first week of the program. She is an illustrator. Her work is very different from mine, which is probably part of why we have stayed close. We do not compete in the same space. We share a way of thinking about work and about what the work is for. Over the years in Chicago, she had become one of the people I called when something happened that I needed to think through out loud. She is a good listener in a specific way. She asks the question that clarifies, not the question that redirects. The night after my mother's phone call, I had called her and explained the situation. She had listened without interrupting. Then she had asked, what do you actually want? Not what's fair. Not what would be the right thing to do. What do you want? I had been surprised by the question because I had not realized that no one had asked me this before. I had been asked what I should do. I had been asked what was fair. I had never been asked what I wanted. The question opened something. The best versions of friendship work this way. They do not answer for you. They ask the question that makes your own answer available. I had been asking the wrong question for 15 years. Danielle had asked the right one. One conversation. The right question. I had needed 3 days to find what was inside. But the finding became possible the moment she had asked. I want to say something about what it means to ask the question that clarifies rather than the question that redirects, because this is a specific quality of Danielle that had made her question useful when other well-meaning questions had not been. When something difficult happens and you tell someone about it, the most natural response is to redirect, to say something that moves the person away from the difficulty. You'll figure it out. At least she reached out. Have you thought about how she must feel? These are not bad intentions. They are redirects. They move you away from your own experience and toward a different framing. Danielle had not redirected me. She had kept me in my own experience and asked me to look at a part of it I had not been looking at. The part I had not been looking at was what I wanted. I had been looking at what had happened. What had happened was real and mattered, but it was behind me. What I wanted was in front of me. Danielle had turned my face from backward to forward with one question. That is the most useful thing another person can do when you are stuck in a history. Not resolve the history. Ask what you want next. The next thing is the only thing available to you. The history is not available to you. You cannot change it. You can only choose what to do now. The forward-facing question is the right question. Not always, and not to the exclusion of the history. But when you are stuck, the forward-facing question is the one that moves you. I had been stuck in the history for most of the 3 days. The history was real, and I had needed to hold it for a while. Then I had needed to ask the other question. Danielle had given me the timing for when to ask it. Not too early! She had not interrupted the holding. She had waited until I had finished telling her everything. Then she had asked. The question at the right moment is different from the same question at the wrong one. Timing is part of the tool. I think about Danielle's question in other contexts now, not just the situation with my mother. When I am stuck on a design problem, I ask it, what do I actually want this to feel like? Not what does the brief require? What do I want? The answer is usually clearer than the brief. The want is the compass. I had forgotten to use it in my personal life. I use it now. The want is the compass. Use it. It points true. One conversation. One question. That can be enough. It was enough. Danielle knew it would be. I have passed Danielle's question on to 2 other people since the show. Both times it helped. A question that helps is worth passing on. I pass it on. What do you actually want? Memorize it. Use it. Give it to someone who needs it. The question clarifies. Use it. It clarified something I had held for 15 years. The forward question. Forward. That direction. Keep going. One question at the right moment. That is all it took. The work continues. The account continues. Both real. Both mine. The question and the answer. Both mine. Both real. Done. All. He put food in front of me and asked nothing. That is a specific kind of love. I know it. Days later, the group chat. She sent me a private message, 20 minutes after the group chat, before I had responded to anyone. She said, I'm so sorry it just came out. I got excited. I didn't mean to. Marcus had been in the room when I read both messages. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, very quietly, that wasn't hers to tell. Before I get to the conversation with my sister, I want to say something about Diane, my coworker who has been an OT for 22 years and who has a specific quality I've noticed in people who have worked a long time with patients. She can sit with difficult things without rushing to resolve them. We had lunch together 4 days after the group chat, and I told her what had happened. She listened. Then she said something I didn't expect. She said, Zoe, the hardest thing about someone taking a moment from you is that you can never get the moment back. But you can decide what the story becomes from here. Thank you for staying to the end. If this story touched something for you, write it in the comments. I read all of them. And if you want to know what I said to my sister, what she said, and what happened between us in the following weeks, whether the relationship shifted and what that looked like, you'll find it all, and I want to describe the college thesis show more specifically, the one my mother had missed, the one where I had stayed up for 4 consecutive nights. The show was at the end of my final semester, and the work in it was the first work I had made that felt like mine in the way that really mattered. Not made to an assignment, not produced to a brief, but made from something I was actually trying to say. I had designed a full identity system for a fictional archive of lost music, the kind of music that existed on single pressings and never got distributed, the kind that only a handful of people ever heard. The system included a logotype, catalog design, record sleeve templates, and a typeface I had drawn by hand. The hand-drawn typeface had taken 11 days. Every character in the Roman alphabet, numerals, and the most commonly used punctuation, drawn first on paper, digitized, spacing refined until the system felt coherent. A typeface is a system in the way that a family is a system. Each member must look like it belongs with the others without looking identical. My professor had stood in front of a typed specimen I had printed and said, "This is the first thing you've made that will last." I have not forgotten that sentence. My mother had not been there to hear it. I had wanted her to hear it. I had said it's fine. At 30, 8 years later, I had finally answered Danielle's question instead. I want to add something more about the scale of the solo show, specifically about what it felt like to see my own work at 6 feet on a white wall for the first time. I had designed many logos over 8 years. I had seen them on screens, on mock-ups, on printed sheets across a desk. I had never before put one at full wall scale and stood back far enough to see it the way someone who had never seen it before would see it. The experience had been disorienting in a useful way. Things I had thought were right became wrong at that scale. Things I had not been sure about revealed themselves as correct. The scale was an editor, a ruthless one. The work that survived the scale was the work that deserved to be in the room. My mother was going to walk into a room where the work that had survived the ruthless editor was hanging on the walls. She was going to see it the way a person sees something when they are not looking through a screen. The design feeling would be in the room. I had spent 8 years learning to put a feeling in a room. She was going to be in the room with the feeling. That mattered to me. That had been the specific reason the answer had surprised me. I had expected to want her to stay away. I found that I wanted her to feel the thing I had learned to make. That was not the answer I had been expecting. It was the true answer. The true answer is always worth more than the expected one. The chart I had made at 11 with colored markers was the same impulse as the typeface I drew at 22. Making something clear and making it beautiful at the same time. I had not known at 11 that this was going to be my work, but the impulse was already there. My grandmother had seen it. She had made the face. The face is still in my memory and it still matters. The people who are there for the small, early things leave marks that last. The people who miss them leave a different kind of mark. Both kinds are real. The second place ribbon had been red. I still have it somewhere. Not as a trophy, but as a relic of the first time I made something that was judged against other things and found to be good. That first time matters more than people say. The face my grandmother made matters too. The list of events she missed ends at a certain point. After that point there is the show. That is the structure. It holds. My grandmother drove 40 minutes to see me win second place at a middle school science fair. I have not forgotten this. The 11 days of drawing the typeface had a quality I later recognized as the quality of work that is teaching you something you did not know you needed to learn. I did not set out to learn patience. I learned it through the 11 days. The learning was inseparable from the making. 11 days. Every character by hand. That kind of work is its own argument for itself. The thesis show. The professor's sentence. The ribbon from 11. The face. Real. The impulse to make things clear and beautiful simultaneously started at 11. It has not left. The second place ribbon is still somewhere. I know where. I keep it. The work continues. The account continues. Both real. Both mine. Real. Solid. Mine. Continuing. Still mine. Done. All. Yes. The expression I use when holding something I can't address yet. I know it from the inside. 9 years of practice. The description below. Just click through. Until next time, take care of yourself. And if someone shared something of yours before you were ready, the moment can't come back. But the story is still yours to write. I want to explain more about what the timing of 8 weeks meant to me specifically, not just medically, but personally. I had gone through a miscarriage the previous year at 11 weeks. It had been quiet. We hadn't told anyone about that pregnancy either, so when it ended, the ending was also quiet. We absorbed it together, Marcus and I. There was something both difficult and protective about the quietness. I had control over who knew and when. With this pregnancy, at 8 weeks, I was aware of being in the same fragile window I'd been in before. The announcement my sister had made, before I had chosen to make it, meant that if this pregnancy also ended before 12 weeks, the ending would not be quiet. I want to say something about the moment I described, saying it's fine at 22 when it was not fine, and about why that pattern had persisted for so long. Saying it's fine when something is not fine is a specific kind of self-erasure. It is also, often, an act of protection. I had been protecting my mother from the weight of what her absences had cost. I had also been protecting myself from the difficulty of saying what was true. Saying what was true would have required a conversation I did not know how to have. I had not had the language at 22. By 30 I had the language. Danielle's question had been part of the language. The 8 years of work in between, the work of becoming someone who can say what a thing is and what it needs and what I want from it, had been the rest of the language. Design had given me vocabulary for being specific about what something is and is not. That vocabulary had transferred. The gap between intention and reception that I worked on professionally, what you intend to communicate and what the other person receives, existed in my own family too. My mother had intended presence. I had received absence. Both were true. The gap between them had not been addressed in 15 years because no one had named it as a gap. The phone call 2 weeks before the show was the first explicit opening. Danielle's question had put me on my side of the gap for the first time. What do you want? Not what did she do? The designer in me had recognized this as the first step toward closing something that had been open too long. I was 22 when I said it's fine at the college thesis show. I want to be fair to the 22-year-old I was then. She did not have the language I have now. She did not understand that saying what she meant was an option available to her. She had learned, through 15 years of a particular dynamic, that the way to manage the gap between what she felt and what was real was to name the gap as fine. This is not a character flaw. This is a learned response to a repeated situation. The repeated situation was, something important is happening. The person I want here is not here. I have to decide how to speak about this. The answer she had found was the answer that required the least of both parties. It is fine. This protected both of them. It also prevented anything from changing. The 30-year-old version of me had a different answer available. Design had given it to her. 8 years of learning to name what a thing is and what it needs, and whether it is working had produced a person who could do the same thing about her own life. The 22-year-old and the 30-year-old are both real. The 30-year-old is the result of the distance between them. That distance had been necessary. I would not have had the answer I had if I had not traveled it. Learning a new language, any language, professional or personal, takes time that cannot be compressed. The 22-year-old who said it's fine was not failing. She was at the point in the learning where the language was not yet available. The 30-year-old who called back and said I would like you to come had the language. 8 years is how long it took. 8 years of designing and making and failing at things and trying again and developing vocabulary for what was right and what was not right and what needed to change. All of that work had produced the sentence. The sentence was the result of everything that preceded it. It was worth the wait. The language develops through use. I use it now. When something is not fine, I try not to say it is fine. I try to say what it actually is. This is harder in some situations than in others. It is always better than the alternative. It's fine protects you from the conversation. It also prevents the conversation from happening. The conversation was worth having. It always is when it's real. Say what it is, not what keeps the peace. What it is. The peace comes after. The language is available now. I use it. I will keep using it. That is the practice. It's fine as a sentence I have retired. It served a purpose for a long time. The purpose is no longer needed. I have better sentences now. I use them. Better sentences. More honest ones. That is the work of becoming more articulate about your own life. 22 to 30. The language developed. The sentence became available. I said it. The language is there. Use it. Use it honestly. Use it even when it is hard. It's fine as retired. Long overdue. Done. The work continues. The account continues. Both real. Both mine. Honest sentences are harder and better. I choose them. The question and the answer. Both mine. Both real. Done. Good. 4 days after a Tuesday morning that changed something. Diane named what remained. I used it. The family already knew. I would have to untell everyone, or not untell them, and carry the knowledge of what they didn't know, or share the loss with people I hadn't yet shared the pregnancy with. My sister didn't know about the previous miscarriage. I hadn't told her. That was my choice to make, not hers. But it meant the information she released into the world had a weight she couldn't have fully understood. I want to say something about what my work as an occupational therapist has taught me about permission. In OT, we work with patients who have often lost the ability to make decisions about their own bodies, their own routines, their own environments. Part of the work is about restoring that agency, helping someone regain the sense that what happens to them, how it happens, and when it happens is within their own control. When someone loses that there is a version of the story that stays inside the grievance. That version counts the absences and concludes from them. I understand that version. It is not the version I lived in the end. The version I lived had required Danielle's question, the question that moved me from the history to the present moment and asked, given everything that is true, what do you want? The answer had not erased the history. The history was still real. The absences were still real. My mother had missed those events, and that had cost something, and the cost had been real. What Danielle's question had allowed was the possibility that the history did not have to make the decision for me. I could hold the history and still choose. The choice had been mine to make. I had made it. What happened in that room on the Thursday in October had been the result of a choice. It had mattered. It had been the right thing. The morning after the show, the conversation I had with my mother over coffee before she drove back had been the first honest conversation we had had in longer than I could account for. Not the big conversation that covers everything. A first one. A real first one. That was what the answer to Danielle's question had made possible. The question is worth keeping. Whatever your situation is, what do you actually want? Not what the history says. What do you want? The answer is yours. It was always yours. The morning after the opening was the conversation I had not planned for. I had planned the show. I had planned the opening. I had planned the question I had answered. I had not planned for my mother to still be in Chicago the next morning and for us to have coffee before she drove back. The coffee had been her suggestion. We had sat at a table near the window of a place near the studio, and she had said things that I had not heard her say before. They were not grand gestures or sweeping apologies. They were specific and quiet and true. She had said she had seen the work, and she had understood something about who I was that she had not understood before. She said it exactly that way. Something she had not understood before. I had not tried to fill in what that something was. I had let it be what she said it was. That was the beginning of a different kind of conversation between us. Not the conversation that resolves everything. The conversation that starts honestly. There is a difference. The starting honestly version is rarer and more valuable. Danielle's question had made it possible. The answer I had found had put me in the room. The room had done the rest. I will close with this. The question Danielle asked is not a question that dismisses the history. It is a question that holds the history and then asks what you are going to do from here. The here is the only place the choice can be made. The history is not available as a place to make choices. Only here is. What do you actually want? Asked with genuine curiosity and without agenda, is one of the most useful questions one person can ask another. I am grateful that someone asked it of me at the moment when I needed it. I try to remember to ask it of the people I love when they are stuck in a history. The question is a gift. It was a gift to me. I try to give it when I can. What do you actually want? Not what's fair. Not what the history says. Not what you should want. What do you want? If you are stuck in a history right now, try this question. Give it the time it needs. The answer may surprise you. Mine surprised me. It was the right one anyway. That is how the right answers often arrive. Surprising. And then, once you have them, obvious. Whatever yours is, it is yours. It was always yours. The right answer arrives surprising, and then obvious. You will know it when it comes. Trust it. Whatever yours is, it is yours. Ask it. Find it. Act on it. That sequence works. One last thing. The morning after coffee was not the resolution of 15 years. It was the start of something. Starts are not resolutions. They're starts. A start at 31 and 60-something is still a real start. I am taking it seriously. We both are. The start is real. I am taking it. That is all I have to say. Whatever you want, find it. Trust it. Act on it. It is yours. Ask the question. Find the answer. Trust it. Act. That is all. It was always yours. The answer. Yours. The work continues. The account continues. Both real. Both mine. The answer is yours. It was always yours. Find it. The question and the answer. Both mine. Both real. Done. Real. The story is still mine. That is the whole of what Diane gave me. I carry it. Sense of control. There's a particular kind of distress that accompanies it. Not just the practical inconvenience, but the loss of selfhood that comes from having decisions made for you. I had seen this in patients. I had never applied the framework to my own life. The group chat had applied it for me. My sister had made a decision about my information, my body, my family announcement, on a timeline I had not chosen and with people I had not yet chosen to tell. The framework I'd used in clinical settings for 9 years suddenly had a personal referent. I want to say something about Atlanta, about living in this city, and what it gave me in the weeks after the group chat. Atlanta in late spring is humid and green in a way that's almost aggressive. Everything grows fast here. The azaleas are gone by April, but the everything else is relentless through May and June. Kudzu climbing fences, crepe myrtles coming back from where they were cut. The general sense that the city is always in the process of becoming something denser than it already is. I had moved to Atlanta 8 years ago for a position at a rehabilitation center, and I had stayed because the city had a particular energy that suited me, productive, layered, not finished. My neighborhood is full of houses with large front porches, and the evenings in May are the kind of evenings where people actually use their porches. Marcus and I had sat on ours for a long time the night after the group chat, not talking much, watching the neighbor's dog chase something it would never catch. That porch and that evening were the container that held the initial weight of what had happened. I want to say something about Chicago and about the specific texture of the city for someone who does the work I do. I arrived here at 23 with a graduate degree, no professional contacts, and a specific idea of the kind of designer I wanted to become. Chicago had received that idea with the directness it applies to most things. Here is the work. Here is the standard. Show us what you can do. The city's design culture is not interested in self-promotion. It is interested in craft. This had suited me. I am not naturally promotional. I am naturally focused on the work. Over 8 years I had built a client list, a studio practice, and a community of peers who cared about the same things I cared about. The studio I work in now is on the north side, on a floor shared with 3 other independent practices, a photographer, a type designer, and an architect. We share a kitchen, a printing budget, and the specific camaraderie of people who have chosen the same general difficulty for themselves. The solo show had been in a space that belonged to this community. The community had shown up for it. That showing up had been real and solid and not conditional on any history. My mother coming would be something else. Something older. The question was whether the older thing and the new thing could exist in the same room. I had decided to find out. The life I had built was the foundation on which the question rested. The foundation was solid. That made the question answerable. I want to say something about the community of people I had built in Chicago over 8 years, the specific way that community had formed, and what it meant to me when the phone call from my mother arrived. The community had not been assembled deliberately. It had accumulated through the ordinary occasions of a shared professional life, the coffee with a studio neighbor that became a regular meeting, the project that introduced me to 3 designers whose sensibility I respected, the events I had attended not knowing anyone and slowly started knowing people. Danielle from the first week of graduate school. These relationships had not announced themselves as important. They had become important through the repetition of showing up. The Soul Show had been for all of them. Not for the market, not for clients, not to sell anything. For the people who had been present for the making of the work over 8 years. The people who came on that Thursday evening in October would be those people. What was significant about that was that the life I had built was not built around my mother or in reaction to her or in her absence. It was simply built. It existed. It was mine. The question of whether to let her in rested on that solid foundation. The foundation made the question safe to ask honestly. Nothing depended on her being there for the life to be real. It was already real. That was the ground under the question. The foundation I had built was the thing that had made it safe to answer Danielle's question honestly. If I had been in a different position, if the community were fragile, if the work were uncertain, if Danielle were not in my life, the question might have produced a different answer. Not because the honest answer would have been different, but because I might not have been able to access it. When your life is solid, honesty is safer. When things are fragile, the honest answer can feel too risky to reach for. I had the solid foundation. I had been able to reach. The answer had been there waiting. I am glad I reached. A solid foundation does not protect you from difficulty. It makes you able to face difficulty without being destroyed by it. My foundation in Chicago had been built slowly and deliberately over 8 years. It was solid when the phone call came. The phone call had not destabilized it. I had been able to sit with the question because the ground under me held. I am grateful for the 8 years that built the ground. 8 years of ground building paid off in October. I will keep building. I am grateful for Chicago, for the craft and the directness and the people, for the foundation. The community in Chicago is my family. I do not mean this as a replacement for the one I was born into. I mean it as the family I assembled through choice. Both families are real. One was given. One was built. The built one had been there for me in every practical and important way. I did not know at 23 that the city would be mine. It is mine. Fully. North Side. The studio floor. The shared kitchen. The Thursday opening. Chicago held. The camaraderie of people who have chosen the same difficulty. That is the best kind. Chicago for 8 years. Foundation built. Question asked. Answer found. Show held. The work continues. The account continues. Both real. Both mine. Real. Solid. Mine. Continuing. Chicago. Still mine. Yes. Good. Yes. I was clear. That is all I was trying to be. I want to say something about the show's preparation, the 3 months of work that had preceded the opening, and about what it had been like to arrange 8 years of work in a single room. Design work accumulates invisibly. You finish a project, you archive it, you move to the next one. The accumulation is stored on hard drives, and in client invoices, and in the slow improvement of your judgment over time. What it does not do, until you choose to make it do this, is exist in a room where you can walk through it and see what you have made. The 3 months of preparation had involved selecting the work, curating the sequence, deciding what the installation should say about the practice as a whole. I had printed every piece at the scale I wanted it seen at. I had been specific about the paper and the finish and the framing and the spacing. When I had walked into the space on the afternoon before the opening and seen it fully assembled, I had stood there for a while without moving. It was the first time I had seen the 8 years as one thing. The room asked something of me. Do you stand behind this? I had stood there and looked at the work, and I had said yes. Not out loud, in the specific internal way of knowing that something is solid. My mother walking into that room and seeing what was there would be different from any conversation we could have about the work. The room was the work. She would be in the room. That was what I wanted. Walking into the assembled show on the afternoon before the opening had been one of the quieter experiences of my professional life. I do not mean quiet in the sense of peaceful. I mean quiet in the sense of serious. The room had asked something of me that I had not anticipated. It had asked, "Do you stand behind this?" I had stood there and looked at the work, and I had said yes. Not out loud, in the specific internal way of knowing that something is solid. The work was solid. That solidity was the result of 8 years of choices, clients I had taken, and ones I had turned down, aesthetic positions I had maintained, and ones I had revised, the slow accumulation of understanding what I was actually trying to do and why. Every piece on those walls was a record of a decision. The collection of decisions was the practice. The practice was what I had become. My mother walking into that room would not be walking into a show. She would be walking into the answer to the question of who her daughter was now, at 38 years after the college show she had missed. The answer was on the walls. It was comprehensive and honest and mine in a way that 8 years of work makes something yours. I wanted her to see it. That was the true answer to Danielle's question. I wanted her to see what I had made in the years since she had not been there. One more thing about the room and about what it contained. The work in the room included things I was proud of and things I was simply satisfied with, and 1 or 2 things that I had included because they were honest rather than because they were my best. I had made the curatorial decision to include those honest but not best pieces because I wanted the show to be a real account of 8 years, not a highlight reel. A real account includes the learning and the reaching and the not quite. The not quite pieces were from the early years. They were evidence of someone trying to find out what they were doing. By the time my mother walked into that room, she would see the whole arc. Not just where I had arrived, where I had started and how I had moved. The arc was mine. She would walk through it. The work in the show will outlast the evening of the show. It exists now in the physical printed form in which I made it. The morning after conversation with my mother also outlasts the morning. It is the beginning of a new account between us. The account is being built slowly and honestly. That is the right speed for it. The show ended Thursday night. The account with my mother began Friday morning. Good timing. The afternoon in the assembled room is one I will not forget. Solid. Quiet. Real. Mine. I showed my mother the early pieces too. The not quite ones from the first 2 years. She had looked at them carefully. She had said, "You could already see it then, what you were trying to do." I had said yes. The trying had started early. She had not been there for the trying. She was here for the result and the arc that led to it. The arc is on the walls. She walked through it. That was enough. More than enough. Do you stand behind this? Yes. I stood behind it. I still do. Walking into the assembled room. Saying yes without words. I will not forget that afternoon. The show was the argument. The walls made it. She heard it. The work continues. The account continues. Both real. Both mine. Real. Solid. Mine. Continuing. The room. Still solid. Done. Real. Yes. We raised our glasses and no one else knew what that meant. That was fine. Some things should stay that small. When I called my mother back on that third evening, the conversation had been short. I had said, "I would like you to come." She had paused. Then she had said, "Thank you." I had given her the details, the address, the time, the parking situation on the north side on a Thursday evening. We had not had a big conversation. I had not narrated the 3 days. I had not explained Danielle's question or my answer. I had simply said the thing that was true. I would like you to come. Sometimes the thing that has been complicated for a long time resolves into a single sentence. This had resolved into that sentence. The sentence was the result of everything that had happened before it. The 15 years, the phone call, the 3 days, Danielle's question, the answer I had found. But the sentence itself was simple. My mother had paused before saying thank you. In that pause I had heard something I could not name precisely, but that felt like the specific gratitude of someone who had expected to be told no. The pause before the thank you is the part I remember most clearly. It was the pause of someone who understood what the answer had required of me. She did not fill it. She let it be what it was. Then she said thank you. I had said, I'll see you Thursday. That was all. That had been enough. I have thought about that pause many times in the months since the phone call. The pause before thank you. There is a category of pause that contains more than silence. This one had contained, I think, the recognition that the answer was not the answer she had been prepared for. The recognition that the question she had asked had required something real from me. The recognition that the thank you she was about to say was not a social courtesy, but something more honest than that. I cannot know precisely what was in the pause. I know what it felt like to sit in it on my side of the line. It felt like something real was being acknowledged. Not the 15 years. Not the absences. Something more immediate. The fact that I had said yes, and that saying yes had not been automatic. She had understood that. The pause had been her understanding made audible. Then she had said thank you, and I had given her the address, and we had said goodbye. I had put the phone down and I had gone back to work. I had been working on a logo project for a small bakery. I had picked up the pencil and I had continued. The work continued. The other thing was beginning. After the phone call I had stayed at my desk for a while. I had not immediately returned to the bakery logo. I had sat and let the phone call be what it was for a few minutes. There is a thing that happens when you say something true that you have not said before. The body needs a moment to catch up with what just happened. Something that had been held in one position for a long time had shifted. That shift takes a moment. I had given it the moment. Then I had gone back to the bakery logo. The bakery logo was due on Friday. Life continues around the moments that matter. That is not a diminishment. That is how it is. The moment had mattered. The bakery logo also mattered. Both could be true on the same Thursday evening. The bakery logo was finished on Friday as planned. The client was satisfied. The work continued. The other thing, the thing with my mother, the coffee, the beginning of the honest account, also continued. Both things continued in parallel. This is how life works. The ordinary and the significant run side by side. The skill is knowing which is which and giving each what it needs. Work and life in parallel. The bakery logo and the honest account. Both mattered. Both done. Thursday evening. The call. The pause. The thank you. The address. I'll see you Thursday. Enough. The pause. The thank you. The address. I'll see you Thursday. That whole exchange took less than 2 minutes. The 3 days before it had taken all the time they took. The 2 minutes were the result. Duration and weight are not the same. 2 minutes of phone call. 3 days of preparation. The math checks out. The right answer is often the simpler one. I would like you to come. Simple. True. She had expected no. I said yes. The pause held all of that. I heard it. I'll see you Thursday. 4 words. The right 4. The work continues. The account continues. Both real. Both mine. Real. Solid. Mine. Continuing. The call. Still the right one. All of it real. Both. Real. Mine. Patterns are more reliable than promises. I trust what I see repeated. I was seeing it repeated.